So about a week ago, I posted a video where I talked about the fact that I speak Spanish, and immediately I received a few messages. One of them asked me where I learned my Spanish from. Another one asked me if I was a foreign exchange student. Another one asked me if I learned Spanish because I was in the healthcare field, because there was a large Spanish-speaking population in my area, which is a really good question. And a few asked me if I recommended specific programs for those in EMS that are wanting to learn just the basics to communicate with their patients. And then one person flat out just told me I did not speak Spanish and it was a lie. And that is 100% okay. They are entitled to their opinion. But I did go ahead and pin a video that I did a year or two ago where I spoke completamente en español. And actually I was in this very same recliner at that moment when I was recording. So I do speak Spanish. I hardly speak it like I used to. When I was working on the ambulance full time, I was speaking it every time I went to work. When I come home, I speak English, so I don't get that practice. And it's the same as anything else. If you don't use it, you lose it, you get rusty. And to answer some of those other questions, I'm not a native speaker. It was not my first language. I did not learn it because I was going into the EMS field, but I did learn it prior to going into the EMS field. So I've always kind of had my nose in a Spanish book. From 8th grade to my senior year of high school, I was in some sort of Spanish class, and I took Spanish classes when I was in college too. But my husband and I, our senior year, just a little fun fact, were the only two that took Spanish 4 class in the whole school. So I was destined to be together. And to the person who asked if I was a foreign exchange student, not exactly. I did graduate high school and I moved to Puerto Rico. We know that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, and I don't know what I was expecting. I had grown up with my nose in a Spanish book, so I knew all this proper book Spanish. And then when I was around people who spoke Spanish, it was Mexican slang. And then I moved to Puerto Rico. It was a totally different dialect. The slang was totally different. I was certainly not a foreign exchange student, but I was certainly a fish out of water. All of my classes were in Spanish. I didn't know what was going on half of the time, and you would think, Stacy, you've learned Spanish, you should know it. It was so different. One of the best ways, in my opinion, to learn Spanish is to fully immerse yourself in the language. And I will be honest, I was a little bit spoiled. When I would get home, a few of my roommates spoke English, and so a lot of our conversations were in English because they loved the practice and I loved just not having to think about every word that was coming out of my mouth. Now, over time, being around Spanish, I started to dream in it, I started to think in it, I started to translate everything that would come into my brain in Spanish. I would translate it into English. If it came into my brain in English, I would translate it to Spanish. I don't have that anymore, I guess because I'm not around it as often, but immersing yourself in it is the best way to learn. But I understand not everybody can immerse themselves in order to learn a new language, but if you are just interested in being able to learn the basics to communicate with your patients and ask questions, so when I say basics, obviously we need to know name, birthday, allergies, and just the basic questions that we ask our patients regularly. But what other kinds of phrases, questions, and words would you like to be able to say with ease and or understand? I'm so curious. Let me know.